Okay, so let's look at the second part of that question. So we have a table that gives the supply schedules of the only sellers of hot air balloon rides. So we do have the prices of hot air balloon rides for Giselle, Keaton, and Madison. So the first question says, construct the market supply schedule. So the market supply schedule. Now this is very synonymous to what we did earlier in terms of demand. Again, the market supply schedule is going to be the horizontal sum of all supply curves at a particular price. So I'll just say horizontal sum. Okay, so we take each price. Oops, my M looks funny. We take each price and basically add all the supply given, okay? Right, so at 100, Giselle is willing to supply 30. Keaton is willing to supply 25. And Madison is willing to supply 20. Okay, so at 100, we have 75 in total being supplied. What about a 90? So at a 90, we basically do the same thing. Again, it's a horizontal summation. So we have 25 plus 20 plus 15. So that's going to be a 60. What about at 80? We have 20 from Giselle plus 15 from Keaton plus 10 from Madison. So at the price of 80, we have the total quantity supplied, which is the market supply, being 45. And at a price of 70, we have Giselle being 15, Keaton being 10, and Madison being 5. So then we have at a price of 70, we have basically 30. Right, and we do this for every single price. So 60, we're going to have 15. Okay, at 50, we're going to have 5. And at 40, we're going to have 0. Okay, so that's what we get in terms of the market supply schedule. You basically find the horizontal summation of quantity supplied at each market price. Now let's look at the next question. What are the minimum prices that Giselle, Keaton, and Madison are willing to accept at supply 20 rides? Okay, so let's look at Giselle first. Again, we go back to our table. The data is always provided in the table. For Giselle, at 20 rides, she's willing to charge how much? So for Giselle at 20, if you go to your table, you notice that she's willing to charge $80 per ride. What about Keaton? For Keaton, at 20, he's willing to charge. So at 20 rides, he's willing to charge. Again, we go back to the table. He's willing to charge $90 per ride. And then for Madison, at 20, she's willing to charge $100 per ride. Okay, so this is the information being given, and we're just relaying this information over there. Okay. Now, the next question is looking at the marginal social cost when the total number of rides is $30. Okay. So in other words, how much or how many rides is society willing to offer or sell at $30? Okay. How many rides is society willing to offer or sell if the total rides is basically 30? Okay. So what is the market price if total rights is 30? If total market rights is 30. Okay, so how much is society willing to sell 30 rights? Okay, now we go back to our table, and from there we can clearly see, so again, you look at the market supply schedule, and you see that at $70, society is willing to supply 30 rides. Okay, so at $70, society is basically willing to supply 30 rides, okay? So we have $70 over here. And the next thing we need to do is find producer surplus, okay? Now producer surplus, which is PS, equals half times the market price minus the minimum price a seller is willing to charge. So that's the flip of demand, okay? Times the quantity at the market price. Right, so let's just do Giselle's. So Giselle, her producer surplus, we have half. The market price we've been given is $70. So we have 70. Minus the minimum price Giselle is willing to go. Now, how do you find the minimum price Giselle is willing to go? Well, it's the price at which Giselle's first point is basically zero, or she's willing to not go for any sort of, ride. She's willing to sell nothing. So we have 40 in that sense. All times 15, because that's the quantity Giselle sort of is going to offer at $70. Okay, if you do your math right, you should get $225. Let's look at Keaton. So for Keaton, we have half times the market price, which is 70, minus the first point where Keaton is willing not to offer any ride, which is 50, that's the minimum price, times the quantity he offers at 70, which is 10 in this case. And again, if you do the math right, you should get $100. What about Madison? We use the same formula. So for Madison, we have half, right? Times 70 minus 60 times her quantity supplied at 70, which is 5. And we get 25. How do we get 60? Well, it's the first point at which Madison doesn't offer any ride, okay? So that's how we find the producer surplus, okay? It's half times the market price minus the minimum price times the quantity at the market price. Now, let's look at the total market surplus. So the total market surplus is the addition of all producer surplus in the market. So in this case, we have 225 plus 100 plus 25. Okay, So our total market surplus should equal $350. So that's how you find producer surplus. So guys, again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Send me an email. You can always come to my office and I'm more than willing to help you out. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your attention and I'll see you in class sometime.